Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of Data Engineering Weekly. This week we are going to talk about edition 123. We got some exciting articles published on edition 123. We're going to pick three top articles that we thought like people will like. And let's jump in. And we have Aswin with us. Hi, Aswin.
Hey, Ananth. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you're all doing well. And great topics for discussion today.
Yeah, I think one of the things, kind of very interesting topic to begin with, the blog from BuzzFeed talking about lessons learned building products powered by generative AI. And this is the first time I've seen a company actually shared how their employees or they kind of interpret, including the generative AI into their workflow, into their work culture itself. So it's very fascinating to read the first part of it.
Yeah, totally. I think generative AI is going to be the thing. It's the talk of the town right now. And I think the promise of that is already being seen in a lot of these apps that are trying to integrate that. I think generative AI is going to be the future. Let's talk about that for the next couple of minutes, Anand. But specifically towards the later part, I want to also imagine and take your brains and creativity out in terms of what do you think that generative AI will do in the world of data engineering also, right? What are we going to see? Where is the market going to shift? So yeah, let's jump in, focus on the BuzzFeed for now, and then jump in.
Yeah, okay. I think they kind of share. So they shared what are the lessons they learned out of using generative AI, especially ChatGPT here. And the number one thing they're kind of mentioning about, like, get the technology into the hands of your employees, especially creative ones, so you can amplify their creativity. A lot of people are kind of constantly discussing about whether AI or kind of ChatGPT kind of a system can take your job away. I think BuzzFeed kind of taken a very bold approach to kind of say, like, oh, no, it's going to be improving the creativity. Right. And so for doing that, what they do that is like, they get the company-wide access to open API playground interface and make them intuitive and easy to access the whole sandbox environment for the staff. And they integrated this technology right into Slack so that people can collaborate on prompts, witness how others are using the tool. So they're kind of really bringing the new tool and integrate with their existing tools and, make people familiarize with the systems. I think that's a very wonderful approach.
Yeah, I think they allowed them to make some quizzes, if I'm not wrong, right? And create some simple quiz game and do the entire thing, integrate that with social media and all of that. I think that's fantastic. I think one of the use cases that I think we all will try internally in our own organizations is identify use cases, and I think we're all wondering that. I am thinking of myself and my use cases as well in terms of how can I do and bring generative AI and use OpenAI and all of that, and use prompt engineering into creating data flows. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking around that as well. So yeah, we're all looking for those low-hanging use cases, and then BuzzFeed definitely has covered some basics here on how they did that experimentation. Firstly, giving users the access, bringing some moderation, bringing mechanisms in terms of what happens if even if you have the right API limits in an enterprise plan, what happens if things don't work? How do you communicate that with users? How do you handle the situation is what the thought process that this particular blog takes you about.
Yeah, I think for me, the fascinating thing that lesson 2 and lesson 3, the lesson 2 talk about good and effective prompts are a result of close collaboration between writers and engineers. The lesson 3 talking about moderation is essential. Build a guardrails into your prompt.
Yeah.
Prompt engineering going to be the real thing. The much of the prompt tuning that you are going to do, how effectively you are constructing the prompt, you might get a better deterministic answer out of it. I think that's going to be the real challenge because the ChatGPT kind of systems are a non-deterministic system. Two people trying to ask a similar question, or even if you ask the same prompt again, there's no guarantee that you will get the same response back. So you will be having a non-deterministic response from the system. So if you are including in your workflow, And so your workflow also be very non-deterministic. And also like you have a very, let's say even the prompt is kind of giving you the similar response, somehow you're able to adjust that one. What will happen if somebody leave the company and then the new one comes in and they change the prompt somehow? Like all the schema kind of a problem comes into it, like in your whole workflow kind of maybe breaking there. The other aspect is like what will happen if you upgrade the model from version 3.5 to ChatGPT 4.0?
Correct.
Will it still give you the same response back? I think these are the very interesting challenges I see. I think BuzzFeed also kind of rightly called it out, those two things in the lessons, like, and they kind of trying to, the lesson 4, they kind of tell you that LLMs are not dark magic, demystify the technical concept behind the technology can lead to better applications and tools. So educating the people that is going to give you a non-deterministic response. So if you are introducing into your workflow, embrace that.
It's heavy probability, right? It's probabilistic largely, right? And I think that's a good point that you mentioned, Anand. So we need to educate the users around what can be possible and what will not be possible as well. I think that is very important. I think that's what BuzzFeed has done. There are limitations, right? It is not going to do all the work for you. And it's very important to understand how this entire generative AI works, because it helps you to achieve based on the input that you pass on, the communication, and that's the whole difference between what you do in Google search versus here. So I think that's a important part of your design. If you are trying to do that, I think it's important to educate your product teams who are non-technical, who do not come from an AI ML background, to educate them on how things work behind the scenes for them to understand and appreciate the limitations as well as the benefits on how they can use it as well. I think that one more point that stands out here is around moderation. I think that's also an important aspect of this. You do not want them, when you're building a product using generative AI, it's very important to do some restrictions. So at BuzzFeed, they have used an external library or a dictionary with rules that kind of allows them not to do certain set of actions. So I think that's also important.
Yeah. The lesson 6, they're talking about the economics of using generative AI can be tough, especially for an ad-supported business model. I think this is something that like not many people now, like I hope like as the technology kind of progress, more and more companies coming in, the market kind of dictates the price, bring the price low. Right now, it's all charged based on the number of tokens that you do that one. So now how big your prompt can be based on, like your query can be very expensive to do that for every recommendation engine or any other system that you're going to building it. Like each and every query going to cost you a lot. So how that can be a possibility, the economic of scale in order to integrate into your workflow. I think they rightly called it out. But I believe, we're just in the very beginning stage of it.
Yeah.
So I do believe like it will go down, as moving forward. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a great article. They also cover about a lot of the other models to do with images, fine-tuning of images, DALL-E and etc. They cover that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to kind of move to the next article. I think we briefly talking about like the training and the culture aspect of it. I think the second article is like very hitting the heart, like how to build an on-call culture in a data engineering team. I think this topic is very close to my heart. And back at Slack, I built an on-call dashboard.
Really? Okay, good.
Analytical solution. I spend a fair bit of amount in observability and monitoring infrastructure buildings. And so the on-call is kind of very close to my heart. Like we do. So what? I'm not sure like this is covered here, but yeah, definitely. What do you think of on-call?
Okay. Coincidentally, we're recording this on 13th of April. 12th of April, Rajesh from Cinebia, basically, he gives me a call. And he says, Ashwin, the latest buzzword in the market is around orchestration. Kristen from DBT, a lot of them talking about orchestration as a problem. And the reason is Airflow causes a lot of issues as the scale goes up. Right. So we were talking about my experience with production systems. When you go live, or when you're in a process where you're moving from pre-prod to prod and the release is not going up, your airflow has come down or your scheduler has failed. What happens to that? Typically, data engineers are not very comfortable. They're not happy about doing this. So you have to create an on-call culture. I don't know. I think Ananth put this topic last week, but this last 3-4 days, the topic in LinkedIn, even my feeds are all around orchestration issues. And I'm not sure how timely this is, but it's a very good topic to discuss today, very timely. I think, and something that we are all realizing the importance of a solid and the topic can be on call, but we're talking about production grade data engineering and production monitoring teams here, right? How do you ensure the data availability of your system, the reliability of your system is managed when things go wrong? I think thanks to the author here, who basically is helping us understand how they're addressing that.
Yeah, actually, the other kind of explaining a pretty interesting point here, like why on-call engineering practice is not prevalent in the data engineering domain, because not many companies, the pipeline kind of failed. Okay, let's come and see tomorrow. Yeah, some executive might not see the dashboards, like so what, right? I think that we kind of joke data engineering is like a backend of backend, which nobody really kind of care about it. So in that's kind of also kind of very relevant to the companies that kind of giving the importance for the data side of it. I think relevant to on-call, there is a lot of talking about, we are creating so many junk data, and then how do we kind of making a value out of it and all sort of a thing. I think embedding an on-call culture is particularly very critical. If anybody wanted to have one takeaway out of listening to this, I'll tell one thing. If your data pipeline is not serving production use cases, 80% of your production pipeline is not serving your production system, which means a production, by production, I mean some real customers, internally or externally, actually using that every day or every week, then you have a serious problem. Because you are not satisfying your customers, you're just creating junk data from there. No data catalog, no data quality system going to help you do that one. Yeah. If your pipeline is not a production pipeline, and if your data assets that you're creating is not, you're not going to hold the same standard as a production system, then you have to seriously rethink why you do that.
Totally. Yeah. It reminds me of a scenario which I had. I think this is quite often within this scenario is a little close to me, because I was working in India hours that day, and I get this email from a customer who's reached out to every DL. He's reached out to customer care, no response. They have a standard SLA with them, and their business is the morning their advisory team comes and the data warehouse needs to be refreshed with live data. And they had renewed the product, and the pipelines are not, they didn't get the latest version of the license. The pipelines are not running. And this guy was completely awake during the US hours. Their CIO, the CDO, everyone was up trying to reach somebody at Talent. I got involved because they reached a deal where I was copied. While data engineering jobs may not seem important, they are the lifeline for business. Right? If it is not, then you're in the wrong data pipelining or data engineering team, which does not have mission critical value. I think it's important that we have a very critical value established to data engineering. So the pipelines are very important, because somewhere down the line, somebody is dependent on that for the next day's job. I used to work for an ice cream company when I started my first data warehouse, Dryer's Ice Cream. It may seem trivial. What's so important about ice cream company and a warehouse? It was important because we developed a trade promotion management system. If the pipelines failed, the truck drivers would on their PDS get a wrong data. Now, what are the truck drivers doing? They're picking up crates of ice cream to be shipped to Walmart, etc. Right? And if they don't get the right relevant data based on festival season, based on weekends, holiday season, etc., and that's what we used to publish every day from AC Nielsen data, etc. Right? So every small thing that we do in data engineering is also critical. It impacts someone down the line. And if they picked up the wrong number, Walmart is not going to stock enough ice cream, then Probably people don't have enough stock of a certain brand or their favorite one. So yeah, it's all about that, right? So it's I think every data pipeline is important in my point of view, and I think it's a very timely topic. So what has happened over the years is we have creating very bulky data engineering teams who focus on, hey, I'm going to dump all the data into Snowflake. There are 20 different data models that I'm going to schedule in Airflow with very less accountability. And then what has happened over a period of time is we have lost the business context as data engineers, right? So we do not know what we are doing. Right. We think we are basically moving data, dumping data. We're doing one or two transformation. It's getting scheduled through Airflow, but that's not it. We are doing it for enabling someone to take decision. I think we all, as data engineers, need to realize that.
Yeah, totally. I think the authors kind of also calling out the similar thing, right? Like they're saying, like, why the on-call ownership is very, very important. Like, some pipeline fail, we should be able to identify who is the owner for that. I think Airflows, if you look at the Airflow DAM, they kind of, the owner is the top level attribute in a DAC when you're designing. Yeah. So, and also like the authors kind of talking about on-call rotation side of it, how frequently you can schedule it, and what are the tools that you can use, PagerDuty, Opsgenie kind of things. You can actually schedule this call. Airflow has an integration with the PagerDuty also that you can actually alert them PagerDuty and get the call there. And establishing a communication channel is very, very important because the moment you get an alert, you need to know whom you have to communicate. Like,
yes.
The number one principle in the on-call side of it, like the on-call engineer is the first level responder. They are not necessarily need to know everything about the system. They are just first level responding to that one. So always include your run book in your alert. If something goes fail, your pipeline is failing. Oh, this is how it is failing. In the alert that you are sending to a Slack channel or a PagerDuty, have that run book associated with the alert, so that anyone comes on an on-call, say like, oh, this alert comes in. Oh, these are the steps I need to do that in order for me to recover. Or, oh, this alert comes in. If you are not able to work it out, make sure that you talk to this XYZ person who has more understanding and domain understanding about the pipeline. And also, these are the XYZ consumers or stakeholders going to use it. Make sure that you inform them and all those things. So
communication is key. Yeah,
communication is a very, very key, and that's what the authors kind of highlighting, like communication challenge, why that is important there, and talking about like on-call run book and why those metadata priorities, escalation process, troubleshooting guide, and post-incident verification all are very, very essential part. And when the alert comes in, your alert should be self-contained with all this information. It should not be like, your alert comes in, like, you go and somehow figure it out where all those resources are. It should be the self-describe alert. It's a key for an effective on-call operation.
Totally. I think ownership is key in all of this. Defined ownership, defined documentation. I think in the last data engineering weekly podcast, particularly when we were talking about the data products one, me and Ananth, I think we're discussing around reference queries. And I think you need to think of, if there is an incident, how can your on-call support person who's not developed the pipeline himself and who may lack the understanding of what the pipeline does, the impact and all of it, can mitigate it, right? I think Ananth used the first responder example. It's a standard operating model on, okay, I've inserted garbage values. How do I recover those garbage values, right? So I think during the development in itself, we need to think of all of these post-incident actions, which are critical. Write those queries, reference queries out for people to respond to that incident and then recover from that particular state. If it's a pipeline failure, how do they restart? I think that documentation is important. I think somehow we all lead back to contracts and data products on every call, but then that's the truth. If you start defining a contract, you are telling people what to expect, and then you're identifying what is the problem, and then once the problem has been happening, how do I fix the problem also needs to be documented somewhere, and that needs to be documented, right? If you don't document it, if you don't write the reference queries, we're not building it for scale. See, if it's a small project, it is totally fine. If the ownership is still lying with one or two people, but then if you as you scale up, we need to think of defining systems which have a product centric approach towards it.
Right. The other kind of lastly touch base with that, like saying about the on-call journal, about why it is important to maintain the system of record of what are the issues happening and then all sort of a thing. I think one thing I would add on top of on-call journal, we used to have a practice. What we do that the process called on-call handoff. So if you go to any if you go to any hospitals, you will see your nurses kind of shifting, and there is a brief 5-minute sync. The person who was the nurse kind of handing over your history for the day, what happened, they will just quickly summarize. Okay, 12 o'clock I gave this medicine, 3 o'clock she called me for this one, 4 o'clock I gave this medicine, doctor came in and she told about this and you want to call about. So they just quickly summarize what happened in that their time, and then they quickly hand over the context to the other person. So what we do here is we take this journal and then we ask the on-call person for that particular week. We used to have a weekly on-call. We ask the person to kind of summarize, hey, explain about all the alert that you got, what you did. Will you be able to respond to that one? Okay, who actually, like, did we escalate that one? What is the problem? Like, are you able to find the solution in the run book? If not, why? Can we enrich the run book? What are the things that you don't know that? And what are the common patterns of, what are the common patterns keep repeating in your alerts? So for example, one particular pipeline or one particular job might be keep failing. And then you will be able to only see those patterns during when you're trying to do an aggregated analytics. Otherwise, you may miss the context. So having an on-call handoff is an absolutely critical process. That's something kind of missed in the blog. But if you are practicing on-call in data engineering or any engineering practices, for example, have an on-call handoff. One of the things actually we did it is we take high priority or very sensitive about not alerting in the night. So think about this, like, what are the alerts are coming in from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock? It's like, it's your midnight alert. If an on-call person wake up in the midnight trying to solve this issue, then he will lose his sleep. And that is what's the consequence of it, right? If you're not able to get enough sleep at night, you will not be productive in the morning in your office work. So which is like a loss of productivity for you and the company, and then by loss in terms of the dollar. So always keep in mind, like, watch out for those alerts that come from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and prioritize ruthlessly and say, like, hey, I am not going to make a 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock alert. Ask a very tough question. Is this alert supposed to go like 3 o'clock? Can it wait for 7 o'clock? Or if this keep repeating the 3 o'clock alert, can you get a prioritize and fix it? So these small things you do make your system much more robust, your team culture much more improved, and then your productivity will be.
Totally. I think it should start with the design. Right? Yeah. It's a design principle. You start with the end in the mind, right? Begin with the end in the mind is a famous quote. So I think we start with that. You assume things will fail, develop it, start documenting it, start putting the journals out there, and build those systems in such a way that you're building for that. I think somewhere, whatever down the line, whatever you're going to develop is going to go to production, and you may not be working on that particular project at all, or you may not even be in the company, right? So you always think like that, and then start developing things. Automatically, the entire principle starts shaping from there.
Yeah. I think it's all about like building a learning culture.
Yes.
Like how you can improve, like 1% improvement every day. I think with that statement, I think that's a good segue for our last final article from WhatNot Engineering. It's talk about same data, sturdier frame, layering in dimensional data modeling at WhatNot. This is kind of a very interesting article for me. One of the things that I really like about this article, essentially, it's talking about the learning culture, right? And then they're talking about like 1 year before, we didn't adopt any modeling because we are hyper growing. We just wanted to fast deliver this one. So we kind of optimized for speed. And then we reach to a point we are not able to move, then we kind of take a step back and correcting those things. I think that's a very good way of approaching a system design in general, especially for a very hyper growth companies. It's really nice. What do you think of this article?
I have my points on it. Coming from a largely dimensional model data warehouse world, so I think definitely yes. But why could they have not followed it from day zero has always been my question in most of these cases. I understand speed versus maturity, speed versus scale, right? Speed balance against stability is always a trade-off, right? So when your data volumes are not heavy, when you do not have a lot of pipelines, we tend to dump data into a raw landing zone and allow people to operate from there, right? You can also call it as, let's say, a data product engineering in itself. So you dump data and then you allow the domain teams or your function teams to create their own individual data marts. So it's a great WhatNot basically has done something even much more mature than what a lot of these startups basically do, or startup data teams do, is they allow people to create modular data marts with centralized ownership. But then the ingestion part is just dumping into a warehouse where they're using directly Snowflake, but then everybody consumes on top of Snowflake. There's nothing centralized about it, but then as your data volume starts beefing up, you will run into a lot of issues, right? And then that's where you then figure out that, hey, instead of giving it completely to centralized teams, can I create business aware, domain driven data marts? And then your Kimball comes into picture and says, hey, I'm still relevant in the world of Snowflake. I'm still relevant in the world of unlimited scale and unlimited processing. But the thing to understand is dimensional modeling came into picture, and it became very popular and important because compute wasn't enough. Storage was expensive, compute was limited, right? So we were measuring every CPU core, we were measuring RAM, we were measuring storage. And that's how most architectures prior to the cloud world have been. And then the Hadoop world changed that drastically, right? And then we lost a bit of dimensional modeling practices. But then one thing that happened with domain modeling is it was business aware, because you ended up creating from the right, understanding what the user wants, understanding how the data model should look like, the contract should look like, and then coming back and to the fact tables, the dimension tables, the stage tables, bridge tables, whatever you want to call it, right? And then implement the entire flow after you've designed that. That was a major reason. But then when unlimited scale in terms of compute and scale in terms of storage was not expensive. Storage is no longer expensive. So is compute came in. This was overlooked in my point of view, right? So we started dumping, then we started figuring out, okay, what to do with the data. And we all ended up creating a lot of junkyards into our data systems. Right now, that's a challenge today. But then this is a good blog. I think more relevant, more timely, I would say. And that's what we do at Data Engineering Weekly Podcast. We bring all of the more relevant content today that tries to address some of the common challenges and helping you to mitigate those problems in your data teams itself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think one of the things that in the article is kind of very interesting to me is kind of talk about is the type 2 changes, like slowly changing dimensions.
Oh yeah,
I think like the amount of data that we are gathering right now, like if it is an address, it is easy to kind of track, like, okay, this is valid, this is not valid here. But like the amount, like the stream of information is kind of flowing in. And address in this case, like what the author is kind of mentioning, is a one entity that easy to kind of track on that. Like what will happen if you wanted to track each and every dimensions, like the history information around that one. And that most of the things that are kind of very, the larger question is like, is there a data architect who will sit and say like, okay, this is how you need to design address. This is how you need to define this entity. Is there a centralized architecture in place? Like who will maintain this uniformity? Like, okay, you need to apply dimensional modeling. This is how you are going to choose a slowly changing dimension. is it every data engineer's responsibility or analytical engineer responsibility or whoever creating the data set responsibility to actually identify what is the slowly changing dimension of that? And what if they, or it does it have any review process associated with that one? And that is what the problem in early 2002, 2003. And if you look back, like many people kind of embrace Hadoop, not because people are kind of, saying that Hadoop is kind of a step back and all those things. The time before Hadoop is not that good either. For changing one particular column, you have to wait for 3 months to do that. There's a strict process reality in there. And then people just, liberated with that. So that's kind of a very open question for me out of this article. Anyway.
Tough call. See, I think it's a fine balance. So it's a fine balance. I think should the data architect, data modeler come back is a important question here. I think in my experience, probably having one at least for models. I think even in WhatNot's engineering diagram that they've given over here, the second diagram in particular. So they're ingesting. One is the application data. The second one is the event data. They follow a bit of different patterns for both of that, right? So for your application data, which this is how it's going to come, this is the latency it is going to come, it becomes a lot more easier. For event data, which is like streaming and all of it, you may want to follow a different pattern. But the more centralized one is how do you define the way people will consume, the base models on which people will start consuming, putting governance and metrics around it, which is observability, SLAs, etc., is the key here today. Probably going back to dimensional modeling forces people to think that they are serving a business layer, and that design thinking starts kicking in, if you ask me. And that to me is a win today in most data projects. Instead of just randomly creating, it will force you to start working with the business team, force you to think of this model, can I serve 20 different BI teams or 20 different BI dashboards? And if there's a change, and there's a change request process because a model has to change, there is going to be impact both upstream, downstream, into the jobs, into the teams who are consuming or producing the data. So I think it gives that ownership, it gives that constraint. But obviously, yes, it serves its purpose, right? It doesn't give you a free hand for experimentation or all that. I think we need a balance between both of them in projects today.
Correctness and agility never go hands in hand.
Yes.
I think it's for every company has to go and discover their own in this case. So I think, with that, I think we come to a conclusion, kind of this week's episode. Until we see the next week. See you. Bye.
Thank you all. See you. And do share your feedback on the topic that we discussed, right? So I think, and in case you have learned something listening to this, share your feedback in the forums, and we'll listen to it, and we want to improve from there. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
Oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. I hear every YouTuber saying that, so please subscribe.
Thank you.
Bye.